a friend of mine called and he's like, hey man, I haven't seen you on the forum in a while. I know you've been busy. Listen, we're working on Shrek and we need somebody that knows Adobe Illustrator. You're the only person that knows it. And it's like, can you help us with this stuff?
In my 11th episode, I will be interviewing Scott Thigpen, or at sthig.art on Instagram. He is an illustrator and visual development artist who has been working in the field for over 25 years. Scott was on the path of studying religion in college when he decided to take the leap to pursue his passion in the very uncertain fields of illustration and animation. Keep watching to hear Scott tell the story of his first big break into DreamWorks, his time at the Wall Street Journal, all of the smaller clients in between, and all the lessons he's learned along the way. I hope you enjoy. Hi, can you hear me? Oh shoot, I can't hear you. Hold on.
It was me. I had my mic off. Yeah. Hi, good to see you.
Hi, good to see you too. How you doing?
I'm well. So you got your camera stuff fixed up. I love aren't those little nano cubes behind you?
Yes, I love them. They're so beautiful. We have them in a couple places around the apartment.
I always like those. I have a bunch of Hue lights, but I always want the nano ones too.
Oh yeah, these ones are cool too because like they react when you touch them.
Oh wow.
Fancy. Anyway, do you have any questions before we jump in?
Yeah, actually just a couple. So I looked at your videos and your interviews are super that you have. So what's the goal for you with these? Because I know, I guess you're, you've been doing this for a while now, but is this your primary thing or is this just a sub thing or what? Just always interested.
Yeah, well, I actually went into college wanting to get into like visual development or, game design or something like that.
Right.
But I chose not to go to an art school because they were so expensive and I was like intimidated and they were so far away. So I just went to a state college and decided to get an art design hybrid degree. And I didn't really know what that would entail, but it turned out it was just mostly traditional art classes and graphic design classes. And there was one animation course and I was really excited and I signed up for it. But it was just a video editing class. So I was a little bummed out.
Yeah.
So I started taking animation courses and like drawing courses and like digital art courses on my own. But as soon as I graduated college, which was just last summer, actually, I don't know, I was like stuck and I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I feel like I didn't really know enough about the field. So I started interviewing people who work in it.
That's awesome. What a great way.
Yeah. And like in the process of doing this, I have kind of gotten a passion for it. So
nice. Cool.
Now this is my main focus. But for the future, who knows?
So which college did you go to?
I went to Western Oregon.
Oh, okay. I'm not familiar. I taught design at UAB and they pulled me they were like, Scott knows animation. Let him teach the animation class. And I had to follow a pretty rigorous outline and it was not animation. We just ended up doing a lot of After Effects stuff.
Why do they lie?
They want your money.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And then they don't pay us. I taught for about 6 years and I'd have to go ask for a raise. It's like, I can't afford to drive to work anymore. It's like I'm losing money on gas getting up.
Wow. So you taught for 6 years?
Yes. Yeah. It was fun. I was super intimidated when I walked into the classroom because the last time I'd been in college was about 30 years ago. And then, you see people that their skin isn't sagging and they didn't need 16 cups of coffee to get moving in the morning. And I was super intimidated because when I was teaching, it was the millennials were really young at the time. But It was the best experience ever. Sure, I had bad students. You always have bad students, but by and large, like all my students were so cool. So I only keep up with a handful now because it's been several years ago, but man, it's good times.
Yeah, that sounds fun. I always thought that it would be kind of cool to teach. Well, as soon as I know something well enough to teach it.
Most professors are just faking it anyway.
Oh, okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Would you like to introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. Yeah, and I've got my questions over here too. So my name is Scott. Last name is Thigpen. And just like every other person you've ever heard anybody say that they got into art, I drew when I was a kid. We all say that. And when I was a child, I think sometime they'd re-released the Jungle Book, like it was done in the late 60s, and they re-released it again in the 70s. And my mom and dad took me as a child, and that movie hooked me so hard. And I walked out, it's like, I don't know what that is, but I want to do it as a career. And I was from a small southern town, and that was, everybody like artist. What is that? Do you want to starve for a living? And even as a kid, I was like, well, I'd love to be happy and not work a job that I can't stand, all my life. And
yeah.
So I never gave up the dream of wanting to be in the animation industry. It's just that I had no resources. So, I took art in high school with art class, and it was good. I mean, I learned the foundations and stuff, and I took some at college. Any elective I could get, I would go there, and then moved on into just dumb luck, which we can talk about, of getting to work for DreamWorks and then the Wall Street Journal and Snap on Coke, and also your excellent question about small clients versus big clients and my thoughts on that. So I have been, quote, in the illustration and animation industries. I started freelancing in 1994, and they were humble times, lots of rain and noodles. Which is sort of, I guess, a rite of passage to destroy your insides with salty noodles.
Yeah, you got to.
But so, and I live in Austin, Texas, and married, and we don't have children. We just have fur babies. I know such a generic answer. We passionately love to travel, and we have not traveled much. My wife is a geriatrician, so we have to be really careful about. She works at the VA, and we don't want to pass on COVID to a bunch of vets. So
yeah.
We don't travel much, but we are tomorrow. So we're gonna take one of our first trips tomorrow. But
where are you going?
Nashville, which is sort of home. It's where my grandparents were, and Heather had a convention there, and of course it got canceled. But we're still going. So Nashville is fun. So
nice.
That's kind of in a nutshell. I bumped somewhere between 3D modeling and illustration and biz dev when needed.
Yeah, so I did watch the interview you did with or on the Courier Studio, if I'm pronouncing that right. Sorry. Yeah. Which was really cool. I'll link that interview for anybody who wants to watch it down below. Could you give a little bit more in depth about your choices to pick the major that you did in college instead of yeah.
Sure. So I think a lot about that. And there was a period of time I had a lot of regret because I was like, I should have gone to art school, The choice to do religion and then, move into philosophy a little bit was small Southern town, very religious. And I wanted to continue that. My cousin was a kind of a prominent Episcopalian minister. And so I always looked up to him. He was so methodical and thoughtful and narrative, and he could tell great stories. And I think that's what I liked about the whole thing is, the pastors that I was exposed to growing up, the ones that did tell good stories, it was great. The ones that preached hellfire and brimstone sort of pushed me far away from religion. But anyway, I went to college, and at the time for 4 years, I even had regret, doing that, and I wanted to change my major a bunch of times, and I was like kind of caught, like I didn't want to do anything in religion. I didn't particularly like the way things were constructed, and it just was not. There was no hook for me when I took Greek and Hebrew and tons and tons of philosophy classes. I guess somewhere in my 30s, I was like, God, I wasted my whole college career on stuff that does not matter. However, it does matter because it taught me a lot about critical thinking and empathy, which is in severe lack in this day and age. And so I don't have regret about it anymore, but I used to it. And I think my philosophy teacher my Greek and philosophy teacher had two things they said that have impacted me since graduating in 1994. The philosophy teacher said, you don't come to college to make millions of dollars. You come to college to learn. Too bad it costs millions of dollars to learn, but such is life. And then my Greek teacher, the very last thing he ever told us was that you learn more and more about less and less to ultimately know you know nothing, which is sort of like the Dunning-Kruger effect. And those were two things that just kind of stuck with me and have sort of been a driving force almost of how I think about, like when people want to go to college, so they make it big or something like that. I'm like, well, you just go kind of to learn and get some critical thinking skills.
Yeah.
So I went to grad school, which was to get my MDiv or Master's of Divinity. And my Hebrew teacher, I'd taken 4 years of Hebrew previously. And then my Hebrew teacher in grad school called me and he's like, do you know what your grade is in here? And I was like, I don't know. See, because I just didn't care. And he goes, you're flunking out. He's like, you hate it here, don't you? And I started crying. I was like, yes. And he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I just want to work for Disney. And he's like, go work for Disney. So I gave up what would have been a comfortable start of life to take a bunch of dead end jobs. And a lot of people think the recession of 2007 was the big one, the bad one, but there was actually a mini recession going on when I graduated. So entertainment and creative jobs were just in short supply. It was a lot of working a lot of dead end jobs, a whole bunch. So I've been a bill collector, I've scooped poop at a vet before, and so lots of things that humble you quickly. So the idea is that I thought that was the right thing to do, was to go into religion, just because I'd grown up in such a religious household and everything. And it was like, some people are very good at being a minister and caring for others. And I mean, I care for others and stuff, but the one hook that I had was storytelling. And that was the one thing that kind of stuck along through things. And I actually took some of the classes I had to take were on creative writing and storytelling, because the professors where I went to, they said, no expository, just preach narratives, because people love stories. And I think we see that in today's age, where narratives can be created so quickly on the fly with memes and stuff. And so so the big overall theme was just storytelling, just kept going on. So like I said, regret at one point in time, now just go. It was great learning lessons. Could have probably skipped, and gone straight to art school. And sometimes I think, but then I went in.
You learn something from every, choice you make.
Yep. So that was college.
So after college, you were working a bunch of dead end jobs. So what was like the point at which you were like, okay, I'm gonna go at this hardcore. I'm gonna make art my profession.
Gosh, what a story. So I was in grad school. I quit. Of course, naturally, I had to find a job because I had to get insurance. And so I would draw in my spare time. Given I was about 26 or 25, I guess at this point, 24, gosh, things get fuzzy when you're nearly 50. But given at the time, I was like, okay, I'll draw at night and I'll work during the day, except that the only jobs I could find were at night and on the weekends. So I slept during the day. And so I didn't draw that much. I did a little bit. I practiced and stuff, but I wanted, just like any artist, I want to get to the cool stuff.
Get over all the boring practice stuff.
Yes, nobody wants to draw them perspective boxes. So anyway, I was working at Kinko's, which is now just the FedEx Center. But before FedEx bought Kinko's, it was the Copy Center. It was near the local college, and I'll never forget. There was one. I guess I wanted to get serious, and Hercules had just come out, and I was like hooked. I was like, "That's what I want to do." And still, Hercules is one of my favorite Disney movies because the stylized look.
Yeah.
And I started taking figure drawing classes in the mid '90s or late '90s, I guess, at this point. And I was trying to get better and better. And I put together this portfolio. And working at Kinko's was able to get a discount, so I made like 36 printed portfolios, and spiral bound them and made a pretty cover. And they sucked by today's comparison. I mean, they were pretty bad, but at the time, I researched and found 36 animation companies in the world, and I applied to all 36 and got rejected from all 36, and rightfully so. I just was not prepared at all. I was like, oh yeah, I'm good at color, and I mean, I am, but I had to like really study it, to there. So that was again with the Dunning-Kruger effect. Oh, I'll just be an animator. It doesn't, I mean, the skill just didn't carry it. I think the big thing is that Disney did call me and they said, "Hey, we got your portfolio. I'm looking at it right now." Whoever I talked to was the sweetest person ever at the time. And they were like, "Yeah, you just need to work on this and this." And so I decided I would just take classes where I could. This is pre-YouTube. We had the internet. It was still the dial-up internet and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to watch a video was impossible. And so, I'd buy books, and and it was just really hard to kind of connect with artists. So I'll just kind of segue into how everything worked for me. So I guess it was about 98 or 97, and I was at a job that allowed me a little bit of freedom to stay on the computer when I wanted to. And all we had were forums that you had to kind of like hunt and peck and find. And so I found one forum called the Drawing Board. I was like, well, that's cool. And so I clicked on it, and there was all this really cool artwork being posted up by just all these strangers. The thing is, one of the strangers was Shane Glines, and he was responsible for helping out some of the Batman stuff, and he does a lot of freelance stuff. He's worked in and out of the industry a lot. Gorgeous artwork. I mean, he's just so stylized. And he would host weekly drawing jams. And so he would post up, usually it was some kind of sexy girl, because that's what he draws, the sexy girls. And everybody would draw their take on that. Yeah. And as I got to know these people, they weren't just folks just drawing their take on it. Some of them were illustrators in the industry, and some of them worked at Nick, and some worked at DreamWorks, and some worked at the Muppets, I think was another at the time. And so I realized I just kind of walked into a treasure trove of people. A lot of these folks, even though we all have gray in our beard, still work in the industry too. They're just older now. So it was a stroke of just tapping around on the keyboard, and then found this place and just got obsessed with doing these drawing jams. And I would do them every single week. And I realized the competition that you knew on Friday, everybody's going to post up the pictures. So you really had to, draw well, because these people that were, now very big, or not big people in the industry, but have been in the industry forever, they're seasoned at the time. So I was like, well, I want to do better. So it caused me to study more. And it was just the drive and the passion to do that. I created a few pieces that, I made a postcard that I was going to send out to people. Like, that's actually how you kind of courted clients at the time, is to send a postcard with your website on it. I learned how to build a website. At the time, it was nigh impossible. There was the browsers couldn't handle one type of website, and Flash had just come out, and so that was all the rage. And it's a weird time on the internet, web 1.0, and the .com bust. But anyway, through that, I made a lot of good friends at the time. And I guess a few years had gone by, and I've had started picking up a few clients here and there. They were very small. And then a friend of mine called, and he's like, "Hey man, I haven't seen you on the forum in a while. I know you've been busy. Listen, we're working on Shrek, and we need somebody that knows Adobe Illustrator. You're the only person that knows it." And it's like, "Can you help us with this stuff on Shrek?" I was like, "Sure, yeah." I've always wanted to do that. So that was my little breakthrough. I can kind of segue to what you had said. You'd asked about big clients to small clients, so I can talk about that.
Yeah, sure.
So Working for DreamWorks was interesting because I was freelance and I prefer freelance over. I have no problem working with a group. I have no problem working under some people. I kind of have problems with HR and policy, and I butt up against that when there's a dumbass policy and I have to deal with it. I'm not gonna.
Yeah, I think more freedom.
Rebel against it and bitch and moan until it's changed or until they fire me. So I prefer freelance. So when I freelanced at DreamWorks, I didn't even get to go into DreamWorks studio. I was in the Overflow studio, which was a little let down. And I didn't meet any of the celebrities. I met the Eddie Murphy voiceover celebrity when Eddie was not available for donkeys. So that was my big claim to fame. And then when the Wall Street Journal called, I worked pretty hard at getting agents, and that's a whole nother can of worms that I can get into. But anyway, they were able to land me the Wall Street Journal, and that was a really fun time. They were a great client, and that lasted all the way to the recession, which is sort of what wiped me out. The big story is are the little clients. That's the mixed bag. Some of the little clients I've had are excellent. I think the one that meant the most to me was there was a small publication called U.S. Catholic Today, and I was just like, what the hell? I'll just I would cold call people, and it's a good way to get cussed out when you call an art director and catch them on a bad day. They hate you, and they don't want to go to your website. But anyway, I cold called one place, and you could go to Barnes and Nobles or Books a Million. You could get the artist director directory, which was always out of date because artist directors burn out so quick or move on.
Oh yeah.
So I called U.S. Catholic Today, and it's like, hey, my name's Scott. I draw. Here's my website. If you'd like to get a hold of me, here's my number or email, and I'd love to talk to you. So I guess a day later, I got a call back, and it's like, hi, my name's Tom, and I'm the art director at U.S. Catholic. I'd love to use you for a piece, and the pay was pretty good. And so that was, gosh, we worked together for about 15 years, and he was considerably older than I was. I remember he was retiring at 70, and it was almost like telling your dad goodbye to go to college. I mean, it was like, I got a little teary-eyed and stuff, but that was one of the best relationships I'd had. The other one was, so I was living in Atlanta. I was trying to get clients. It was very difficult. And so I was like sending out flyers everywhere. And there was a little gay mag publication called David. And I don't even know if David exists anymore in Atlanta. I'm sure it's digital now, but at the time it was just one of those rags that you go to the ultra hipster shop, and it was free on the side of the, when you're checking out. Mm-hmm. So they were like, Will from there, he's like, hey, my name is Will, and I'm from David, and I can't pay much. In fact, all he could pay was like $25 per illustration. He's like, but I love your work. Would you be willing to work for $25? And at the time I was like, yes, I'll work for free, because I just wanted to get published.
Yeah.
So I worked for David, and he would let me just draw anything I wanted anyway. And it could be classy, it could be seedy, it just didn't matter. And we had such a good repertoire. And then he just disappeared. And I was like, oh, well, I was making a little money. And then I guess about 3 months later, he called and he's like, hey, this is Will. I now work for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I'd love to continue to use you. And so that was a wonderful relationship. And so that's how Little Client became, like, I guess the AJC was kind of a medium client. That's, I've had some small clients that were just nightmares of people. They, the smaller the client, the less the budget, the bigger the people want to be an art director. And the worst is that people are like, hey, I've got this big idea. I'm going to write a children's book, and I want you to illustrate it. And I'm like, have you seen my work? I don't draw children's book illustration stuff. Mm-hmm. And they're like, yeah, we're going to make it big, and the first time you buy into it because you're young and inexperienced, and then you realize you didn't make any money off of it. But people still today write me saying, I've got this idea for a book, and I'd love to share it with you, and we can make money together. And I'm like, look, when you become the next J.K. Rowling, give me a call. But until that time, don't waste my time.
And then you mentioned agents. Do people do that today? I've never heard of that.
Yeah. In illustration, there's a few left. So agents were really big at the time for illustration. The way an agent works is they call you and they say, we'll represent you in the art community. They'll call on your behalf, they take about 30 to 40% of whatever you make, then you got to pay 40 to 50% of that in taxes. So it's not a lot of money, but they do take the work of you having to scramble out of it. I think good agents are around for a reason because they know how to work their artist, but I think bad agents kind of ruined it for a lot of people. I had a pretty good agency, but it went sour towards the end of our, well, I think we were together for a decade or something, but you know, I've always looked at it as an artist without an agent is still an artist, but an agent without an artist is some dude with a telephone. It doesn't diminish if you have one or not. It was an interesting experience, and it did get me a lot of clients. But like I said, let's say you made $1,000 on a project, but you only got $600 of that $1,000, and then 300 of it goes to taxes. Well, you're still broke. So, but if you spend half your day trying to find clients and scramble and send emails and do marketing posts and social media updates and dance in front of TikTok and stuff in the hope to God some art director likes you, and you've wasted all that time, then maybe an agent is okay. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's here nor there. But for me, so I sent a bunch of postcards at the time because it's still in the 90s to get an agent, and nothing, not a thing. And then at this point in time, getting rejected by 36 different animation companies, I'm like, okay, I'm probably gonna get rejected again. But that's okay because it's really just somebody telling you no, doesn't mean anything. And so I was like, what can I do to grab an agent? Because everybody's sending postcards at the time, all the artists that are hungry for work. And so I was milling about, and I went to the Container Store in Atlanta, and I saw these little takeout boxes, and I was like, oh, I'll just make a Chinese takeout box themed deal. And so I bought like 40 or 50 takeout boxes, and I made all this like Chinese meal illustrations, and I put it in there, and I actually took fortune cookies and I took tweezers and I pulled the fortune out of it, and I put another one in there that says you'll be successful with Scott Thigpen, and made little puns like, I won't poo poo on your platter.
Who wanted the poo poo platter?
So nothing. 6 weeks went by, and all of a sudden phone calls were left and right. Like, hey, I got your Chinese takeout box. That was really clever. Do you want to talk? And let's talk about representation. And all of a sudden, I went from not having anybody to putting reps against each other to see who would offer me the best deal. So, and again, my artwork wasn't that great. It's just that I showed up and I made, I tried to be different than everybody else. And
it worked. Well, so now that you do have some reputable big names on your resume, has having those names like gotten you more clients?
Can I cuss? Is that okay?
Yes.
It means jack shit. Yeah. Sure. So when I got finished with DreamWorks and I got paid, I was like, yay, I'm rich. Well, I wasn't, but you're only as successful as your last project. So like once they said, Mr. DreamWorks and Mr. Shrek shook my hand and said, okay, thanks, we appreciate everything. The next day I was like, oh crap, I gotta find more work, and then all of a sudden I can go around and brag all day. Yeah, I worked on Shrek. Shrek was 25 years ago, 20 years ago. I mean, like I spent that money and quickly, because it wasn't a lot after you think about it. But I had to go and start looking for work. So you scramble to the next job on that. So it's nice to put on paper, but I can't tell you how many applications I've applied for to all the major companies, Sony, Disney, DreamWorks again. And I worked for DreamWorks, and I worked at Wall Street Journal. I've been a seasoned illustrator for 20 something years. It doesn't matter if your portfolio is not what they're looking for, you're not going to get a job. So let's say Netflix was to pick me up. Yes, I would go put the red end post on Instagram, because it is very self-gratifying to do that. And I would never knock anybody for doing it. It doesn't mean anything though. Like once these people have rolled off for Netflix, they're no longer with Netflix. And the only people that care are your followers. And like, oh yeah, he worked for Netflix. He's so big, but that doesn't mean anything really in the end. As far as your wallet goes, I think if you're picking up good design skills and you're not different, you just have enough appeal to be different than other people. That's where, you get picked back up. And also being in somebody's eye, like with your interview, a good way to put it is that you reached out. I was like, oh boy, yeah, what a sweet lady for doing that. And I looked at your stuff like, whoa, these are really good interviews. I really enjoy them. They're so cool. And then I went on with my day, and I forgot all about you and this thing. And even up to this point, I was like working in VR, which I know we'll get to that in a bit. I was looking up going, oh, it's 10:50. I've got 2 more minutes. It's like, it's 10:58. I got 2 more minutes. And but I wasn't thinking about you all the way up until this. So it's the same thing with, it doesn't matter. They forgot about me.
Yeah, they're sitting around thinking about
Yeah.
how we're gonna hire you next. Oh, we got to get Scott back.
Yep. Yes. Well, yeah. And there's many Scots. So there's people far better than I am.
Okay.
If anybody starts to try to come after you for, I said the word NFT, I'm really sorry. Because I know they've got a really bad rep, but
I need to do like more research, because like I've done some, but I still like don't have like an entirely good grasp on it.
nobody does. So I have a thought. The only reason I kind of bit on that is that, are you considered Gen Z or millennial?
I have heard different dates. I was born in 1999. So I've heard people say that I'm a Gen Z and that I'm like the last of the millennials. So I'm not sure.
All right, good. So this is my thought. The generation underneath you has never known a time that there wasn't an iPad. Like my generation, I remember having a black and white TV, and it had a remote control that was tethered to the TV. You still had to get up and change the damn thing. And now I have a remote control that has 1,000 buttons on it, and I still don't know what to do. So I just get up and turn the TV on. But anyway, so there's never been a time that the generation beneath you doesn't know high-speed internet, VR, and stuff. And what was it when the App Store opened on Apple, and then parents were horrified when they found out their kids had spent $2,500 on like Farmville, or buying their dolphin a little virtual hat. So I mean, those were the early NFTs, and so now we have this, and I truly think that when that generation enters into the workforce, A, they'll change it, but B, that'll just be commonplace to own and show your personalized artwork collection via the internet.
So is this current project that you're working on, you're working in VR, or VR is just something you're doing for yourself on the side?
Or something I'm doing for myself. So about 2015 or 2014, I'm going to mess up his name. I think it was Goro Fahidi. Boy, I hope I didn't mess up his name. I'm sorry if I did, Goro. But anyway, he posted something on Instagram that was flat shaded. It didn't look 3D, but it was 3D. And it was a little airplane like zooming down through all these canyon walls. And I was like, oh, how's this done? So, he tagged it, thank God. Yeah, he hashtags. And it was like Quill. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what this is, but I want it. So like, I looked it up, and like you had to have VR. It's like, okay, maybe I can justify that. It was like, well, you have to have a Windows machine. I'm like, well, crap, because I was all Mac at the time. So I just became obsessed looking at, they were called Quillustrations, the program that makes it Quill. And it was just these beautiful things. And, I was like, if I ever like have a surplus of money, I'm going to get a VR system and a Windows system and start learning this. And fortunately, because of NFTs, that happened. And so I did buy a computer and a VR system, or a Windows computer, which was a really hard adjustment for me, being Mac my entire life. And I bought the goggles, and it's just like everything was natural to me. Instead of with a pencil, you're still using the same muscle memory to draw, but it's an interesting medium that's been around for a decade, and the programs are still pretty rough. But the very fact that I can create a landscape, spin it around, compose it and stage it within 20 minutes versus 500 roughs, days worth of work just to come out with the comp and the angle you want, is just valuable. And so I model it, and I'm not the best modeler at all. I mean, I'm actually pretty pretty bad, but I know what I'm doing in there. So I take it and I comp out the piece and I compose it and stage it and then go to like Blender, or there's another program called Twin Motion that's like way cool.
Yeah.
And then I light it there and then just export a screenshot or two or three and then bring them into Photoshop and paint over them, which is been hit and miss at times. There's been some times that it's, I've gotten done. I'm like, oh God, what monstrosity have I done? But the learning curve has been hard, but it's been worth it. And I'm taking a class with Armand Serrano, who is art director for a lot of stuff. He's been at Disney, and he has been showing VR demos of how he's done his stuff, and it's just magic, and you can do these pieces and then you can get it over to the storyboarder and say, here's what I'm thinking, and you can kind of send them, give them a tour through your creation, and it's pretty awesome to do that. So I think studios will adopt it in about 5 to 6 years.
Have you used, I don't know what VR system you use. Have you used Tilt Brush?
Yes. Tilt Brush is actually no more. It's Open Brush now. Google infamously buys shit and then they shut it down. And so they bought Tilt Brush, then they shut it down. But for once, Google was nice and they released the code. And so an open source company got it and they call it Open Brush now. And it is so awesome to play with. And I love it. It just drives me nuts with all the little sparkly things and stuff like that. I'm like, no, I just want to do the first stuff first because I'll get enamored by all the sparklies. And then before I know it, I've drawn rainbows everywhere and stars and snow and fire. And I'm like, look at this. And, and then a day later, I'm like, oh God, what have I done?
Yeah, it's so fun. I just started playing around with it. We got an Oculus as a gift like a few weeks ago.
I would encourage you, now that it's free, there's another one called Gravity Sketch. And I personally think that'll be the one that takes over. It's pretty awesome. And it's, at first you're gonna be like, none of this makes sense. But once, it's sort of like an onion, to quote Shrek, there are many layers to that program, many. And it is so cool. And watching, like, I'm not one to watch a lot of YouTube, but I'll watch a lot of demos of Gravity Sketch, and I just sit there and go, wow, how'd they do that?
Who are some of your favorite artists?
Sure. I've yet to see one artist not pause and have to reflect on that. So Crystal Kung is one. She's character designer at Pixar. She is just, her work, she's an extremely skilled artist. Her work is very playful, and her design is just over the top good. I've always liked that. The other person is Amanda Jolly. She's a character designer. She's been with Disney, Netflix. I think she worked on.
Yeah, I think I follow her on Instagram.
Yeah. Goro Fujita, Gorofujita. He does a lot of demos in Quill, which is just he posts all the time. And Henry Wong, who's working for Netflix right now, his backgrounds are just outstanding.
Yeah, I love his work. Oh,
my all-time favorite is Marie Thorhage. She's Norse, but her shape language is some of the best shape language I've seen ever. And every time I've looked at her work over and over, the same image. She doesn't post a lot on Instagram, and it doesn't matter because the work that she has on there is just, I just sit and drool over it every time. And she has mastered the art of shapes and making them tell a story. Like, if you want a strong Amazon woman, she's made these strong shapes for it. Or if you want something silly, she's got that for that. So she's I just love her. Then I have I take mentorship from Ty Carter and Lip Camarella, and both of them, I love their work too. And of course, I wouldn't have gone with them. I've not done that, but
yeah,
they have been two of the best teachers in two different ways, that teaching design that I've ever experienced. And I've been with Ty for about 2 years, and there's at this point, I'm like, yeah, I think I'm going to roll off from him. I don't think I need him. And then I have a session with him. I'm like, damn it, man, I didn't even know that existed. And then I'm back, it's like, okay, I'll keep you on. But
yeah,
getting ready to sort of transition off, just because I'm using him as a crutch as these days. But it's those are my all-time favorite artists.
yeah. Besides other artists, where else do you draw inspiration?
The shower, oddly enough.
Shower
I think,
ideas?
I think the last sliver of privacy we have is the shower. I feel bad for millennials and Z and beyond because you guys will never know a time when something is not trying to get your attention. Where there were plenty of times when I was younger and I'm like, I'm bored. There's nothing on TV. And, and I think in that boredom is when your best ideas come because
Oh,
you just,
yeah.
so like work from home. I freaking love working from home. It's the best thing ever. But somewhere along year 5,000 that we've been in this stupid pandemic, there was a moment I realized, wow, I used that commute time to daydream. I had like, at my last job, I had like a 30-minute commute back and forth with traffic. And like that was 30 minutes I got to listen to a book, or that's 30 minutes that I just could let my brain wander. Music is a huge hook for me. And I can do it in reverse. If you say, what's your favorite music? Everything's my favorite music except for over processed country music and metal. Everything else, like I passionately love music, and it pushes me into another world. So like there's a musician. He's not very well known. His name is Samuel Kim, and it's funny. He just does covers of like Star Wars and The Witcher, and they're all instrumentals. But he even did the Spider-Verse, and they're I could it's powerful enough to make you dream, but not so powerful that it distracts you with like lyrics and everything. So I
Yeah.
usually turn that on. So
Let
that's a
them-
big inspiration. And like I said, I own one of those one wheel things now, which I'm sure I'm going to kill myself on one day. But I'll try to go out and just go for a ride on it or my bike. And there's something about not doom scrolling or sitting on Facebook and scrolling through to see the same damn thing you saw 100 times, because your brain is being passive at that time. So it's just taking in information. Whereas if you have a moment to be bored, then your brain's like, shit, I've got to do something. Then it starts to daydream and conjure up. I think being bored is where a lot of my creativity comes from. And it's really hard to be bored because since the hour we've been talking, I've had 100 things beep on my phone and my watch and my computer, and it's knocks at the door of shit I ordered that I don't need, and it's all this stuff that goes with that. And so if it's very hard to walk away from all that, but if I can, all of a sudden I have massive amounts of inspiration. And that doesn't mean you don't have to go out in the green and go for a walk. You can just go sit on the couch and be quiet for a moment, and then it seems like all of a sudden the creativity and daydreaming comes back.
So what have been the biggest challenges that you've faced
Sure.
as a freelancer?
All right, let's see. Problem I face the most, there's two. One is imposter syndrome, and the other is the comparison game. Again, I think social media is awesome. I love it. I love Instagram. I tolerate Twitter. If I would watch more TikTok, but I don't. The time I get to look at them is when we're in bed. I don't wake my wife up. But like, I think the ability to share your artwork is great that way. The problem is when somebody's like, hi, my name is Daphne and I'm 16 and I created this in 15 minutes and I just got hired by Disney. And you're just like, well, God damn it. It's like, why can't this happen to me? Even though I know that Daphne is not 16, that Daphne didn't draw that in 15 minutes, that half of Daphne's followers are bots. It's like, well, I want that. But I mean, why? What's the difference between 300 nameless souls liking something and then 3 of my buddies going, oh my God, I really like that picture. Why aren't my buddies more important than 300 nameless people? So anyway, I face imposter syndrome every day. And I face the comparison game sometimes. I used to think it was just a me problem until I started looking up at my wife and her friend are very decorated geriatricians. They've been doctors for like 20 something years. I don't think there's a time that Heather doesn't think she's an imposter. And, she's been the good doctor, won awards, and just a kind soul, but she still thinks she's not a great doctor sometimes. And so there's the opposite, right? There's the one where you think you're your God and you're the best artist ever. And nobody likes those people. But I honestly think self-deprecation and imposter syndrome is just as bad. So something that has helped me battle that is if somebody compliments, like there's a joke, how do you want to ruin an artist's day? Compliment their work. And they'll be like, oh God, no, it's terrible. Like my wife when we go to a party or something, my husband's a great artist. Look at this. And somehow she manages to find the worst picture of my art online. She's like, look, my husband did this, and like I'm over there dripping wet with sweat because I'm like, oh God, they're going to be judging me. But somebody, if it's fake or not, they're like, ooh, this is so good. A lot of times artists are like, no, that's my worst piece. I just always say thank you. Somebody's giving you the gift of a compliment. The best thing you can do is say thank you. And so that's kind of helped me battle that. The comparison game, I just have to remember myself is that online, everybody's lying to an extent. So, I don't put my worst artwork up. I put my best artwork. Those are the two big challenges that I still face today.
So if you could time travel back to college days when you were like 20, what would you tell young Scott?
I guess I have two regrets in life. One was when I was a kid, I was enamored with the saxophone, and seventh grade came around and I chose band over football and picked up the sax and picked it up quickly. Like I was a seventh grader, so we're not talking wonderful, but I picked up reading music really quick.
Yeah.
And I loved the Winwood and I loved all the buttons. And so I was in it for a year. And then eighth grade, I just shot up. Like, well, actually, I'm the same size I was in eighth grade that I am now, but I was huge. So all of a sudden, the football coaches like perked their eyes up and was like, well, this big old boy needs to be on our team. I'm not the football type, but I ended up getting in football because peer pressure, and I wanted to be one of the cool kids and the jock, and that is a huge regret because and somebody's like, well, you should just pick up the saxophone now. I'm like, well, no, I don't want to learn it. It would sound like a dying elephant, and I'd rather just pay somebody to listen to him play the sax. That's one regret. The other regret is not going to art school, and so if I could go back, 20 Scott. So 20 Scott was graduating college at this point in time. So 20, I would go back and say, please stop worrying about finding the love of your life. Just let that one come to you. And second of all, do what I would do now if I wasn't married, which would be, draw incessantly and don't, I was just like a 20-year-old in the 90s. I was a slacker, just like our slacker generation. So, I slacked off and just hang out, or I'd love to tell you I was a cool kid and everything, but I was a nerd. So Dungeons and Dragons and playing Magic the Gathering, that had just come out. And so I was with all my nerdy friends doing that. If I could just go back in time, I would just go, okay, I'm not going to go hang out, but just a little bit. I'm certainly not going to sit and pursue girls to date because, that was never great in my 20s. So I would have told myself, please just draw until your hand falls off. And don't worry about what you're drawing, just draw it. That's what I would tell 20-year-old me. So I tell 48-year-old me to do this when I have time. So.
Yeah. Well, do you have any more goals for your career now?
Yeah, that was another one I was thinking on. Up until last year, the dream has also always been to work for Diz. The bucket list was, I don't care if I can just draw one frame or have one little hand, and it can be the lowest Disney show. It doesn't even be the best one, just to say I worked for Disney. So all the way up to about last year, I always had that. And I'll never forget, I had an interview with Don Yamaza, who's a recruiter for Illumination. And we were talking to her, and I was, had my eyes in the stars and talking about, and I just say how great it'd be to work for Disney on anything. And she's like, you know what you are? And I was like, what? She's like, you're a dreamer. And I was like, well, I thought that's for young people. But after it was a pretty successful NFT project we did. But after the first part of that, things kind of changed in my brain a little bit. And I think for the future, what I'd like to do is with VR, there's such a good storytelling element that I'd like to kind of get into some more storytelling through that. It probably was what got me turned on to that was that there's a video on Vimeo. You type in Glenn Keane VR, Glenn Keane Quill, and you see Glenn using one of the first demos of Quill creating Ariel. And it wasn't even a good shot of Ariel. He was doing what he could, to make the wireframe and stuff. But I'll never forget going, that's the future of storytelling. And so at the point I was like, well, I want to work for Disney and, and help them develop that. But now I'd rather do my own work if I can continue to float myself financially and create little stories. Maybe maybe they're just like 1-2 frame animations, like, like the boomerang effect on Instagram, where it's like,
Yeah.
and so maybe that's enough to tell a story, enough that it would impact. I would like to be able to get to the point where I could tell meaningful things, either A, to make people smile and laugh, or B, to cause them to think, so they would be better critical thinkers. So in the age of disinformation, again, I created this image in 15 minutes on my lunch break. That's disinformation, and that's not. Or an artist that's coming into their skin, starting to put their well-rendered work and then not showing all the pre-work they did to it. And in fact, one of the people that I love the most on the internet, her name is Valerie Riker is her name, but she goes by Valerie Draws Daily on the internet, or on Instagram. She posts every day. She doesn't miss a day, and it's the most entertaining stuff that she does. Is she the best all-time artist in the world? No, just like I'm not. Is she one of the most inspiring people in the world to me? Yes. And so I think we need more people that are a little more transparent as her, because she posts what she's drawing for the day, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad. So I would love to be able to create for the future, create stories that were enough, sort of like Aesop's fables, the tortoise and the hare. You don't even need to recount the story. That slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
That there's your narrative. And so I would like to do those. So that's my future projects. And if they hired me, I wouldn't complain. Just to check out.
Thank you so much for agreeing to talk with me. This was such a fun interview.
Yeah.
And I just love talking with people who have some years on me, and people who, don't just like portray this like fake story, like they have everything figured out. Like, it's very honest, and I appreciate hearing your story.
You're welcome. All right. Well, take care. And I look forward to hearing it.
I hope you all enjoyed and learned something. Again, that was Scott Thigpen, or at sthig.art on Instagram. If you liked his work, go follow him. I linked his account below. And if you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, drop a like, and comment what you thought about today's episode. To be notified when the next episode goes live, go ahead and hit the notification bell, or follow me on Instagram at Erin Christine Ross, where you can also vote on your favorite artist from my daily artist features. So go check that out, and thank you so much for watching.